All right, so we're going to look at a problem with hypothesis testing, and it's in the hypothesis testing 4-step method worksheet. So let's just take a look at what we have here, reading the problem. A news report claims that 75% of restaurant employees feel that work stress has a negative impact on their personal lives. So just from that sentence there, I'm already seeing that our data is going to be categorical here. You know, you're asking people, does work stress impact your personal life? And they're either going to say yes or no. So we're already seeing that this is looking like a categorical variable. This work stress has a negative impact. And you can see another instance of supporting that it's categorical is that they reported a percentage here. So that percentage is kind of giving us a hint too. Yeah, you're probably looking at a proportion because the data you're collecting is categorical. So moving on, the managers of a large restaurant chain, they wonder if this claim is valid for their employees. So they take a random sample of 90 employees. So if they take a random sample of 90 employees, that's going to be my sample size, which is N. And they find that 73 answer yes. So notice this 73 is not a percentage. That's a count. And so it's a count of the successes. So we just call the count X. Notice we're going to have to work a little harder to get the percentage. And we'll do that in part 1. And so they answered yes to that question, that work stress impacts their life negatively. And then do these data give convincing evidence at the alpha, so we're told our significance level, that the proportion of all employees in this chain who would say yes differs. So that word differs is very important for us. That means it's not the same. So it means it's not equal to. And we're going to use our 4-step method. And I already knew that we were going to use our 4-step method. So I just want to show you, I've already broken up my actual physical paper into 4 steps. So let's get started, and we'll start with, of course, step 1. So step 1 of our 4-step process is basically our state all of our info and all of our facts, and again, use proper notation for this to get us going. So we're using our proper notation. So we already saw N was 90 employees. And then the number of successes were 73. So we said 73 said work stress negatively impacted their personal life. So that's a little wordy, but that's what that counted. So immediately when I see I have the count of successes, I have this X here, and then I also have my N, I know that I can get my P hat. So my P hat is going to be the number of successes out of how many we surveyed total. So that's going to be 73 out of 90. And when I calculate that, it comes out to 0.811. Remember, you always want to take your percentages to at least 3 decimal places. So that's why I have 0.811. It goes on and on and on, but just make sure you have at least 3. And then I also know, okay, so that means that is going to be 1 minus that 0.811, and that's going to be 0.189. Whether or not we're going to need Q hat, I think it's always good as soon as you find one percentage to find the other. So remember, this P hat, remember that is work negatively impacts life. I'll just put life there. And Q hat is work does not. And I'm just going to put ... meaning it's the same. Work does not negatively impact their life. So just remember that that's what those stand for. And then we've got our alpha is 0.10. So if we had been looking at a confidence interval here, our confidence would be 90%. And then I've got to now look at that claim again. Let's look at that claim that the proportion, so we're looking for the proportion P of all employees. So proportion of all employees, that's why it's P and not P hat. In this chain, who would say, yet, is it different from that 75%? So if I were to just write that statement in and of itself, I would have that the proportion is not equal to 0.75. And when I look at that proportion, it does not include an equal sign. So that means it's the alternative hypothesis. And I'm going to asterisk it because that's the claim that we want to definitely make sure we make a final statement about in the end. And so the null is just going to be that that proportion is the same as 0.75. And again, this has to do with the top one is the work negatively impacts their personal life, and the bottom, still that P is still what we're looking for, that it negatively impacts their personal life. Note also that if you know the null hypothesis and you're going to assume it to be true, that you also know Q. Q would be 0.25, just 1 minus 0.75 there. And then looking at the alternative hypothesis, I see the direction of the test is going to be two-tailed. So this will look a lot like our confidence intervals, and that will have two tails on this test. And that is step 1.